I want to welcome everybody to the Daily Cheat Sheet. Hold on, as we woke up this morning, or as you were awake already, the news of the Israeli strikes first hitting Syria. They took out 3 sites in Syria, but at the same time in Qatar, in Doha, 10 strikes.
10 of the most precise, unbelievable, pinpoint precision strikes you've ever seen. Chef's kiss. Continue.
So all of a sudden, obviously Qatar says, we're not going to be doing the negotiations anymore. And the UAE. And so I was thinking to myself, funnily enough, you know who would be the perfect spokesperson for Hamas to finally elect him officially? Tucker Carlson.
Ooh, good call. He's already
Yeah.
working for them, so there's just kind of a more lateral move than anything.
That's exactly right. It's been unofficial. Just make him the official spokesperson. And all kidding aside, I'll go to men first because I want to hear your take on this. But men, this is obviously a brilliant move. They have no other options. I mean, we know what the world is going to say. We know what the Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world are going to say. But this was a much needed move, and good for them.
This falls in line with everything Israel has been doing since the beginning of this war, and that is you got to do what needs to be done regardless of what anyone says. The thing about this attack on Qatar soil, I didn't think Israel had the balls to do it. I didn't think Trump would greenlight them to do it, but I was wrong on both accounts. Trump is a G. He gave them the green light. Israel gave him a heads up, and they said, hey, we got these guys. They're going to meet for a meeting to discuss how they're going to screw us on the next hostage deal. They're all going to be at the same compound. We want to take them out. Trump said, go for it. They did it. God bless them. This is absolutely what needs to be done. You could run. You cannot hide. There is nowhere for you to be. And Israel needs to hunt down and get every single last one of these people. What's great about all of this is that even as Israel is releasing these not hostages, they're releasing their own hostages. They're getting hostages released from Hamas in exchange for murderers and rapists and baby killers that they're being forced to release from their own jails. And I hope that Israel was going to implant each one of these guys with a little brain bomb and push a button one day like the pagers and kill them all. Doesn't look like that happened, but Israel did vow to hunt down and kill every single last one of those people. So you might be getting out of jail, but you're not going to live a long, happy life. And doing this to those people in Qatar, in the place where they thought they were safe and they have their billions of dollars and they're living like kings, you take them out. Fantastic. I just hope they got them. We're not sure. There are conflicting reports.
But you know what? I'll say this. It doesn't matter if they got them or not.
I agree
because
with
of
you
what
100%.
you just said, Mend, and I know Judah agrees with this because we talked about it offline. This is a message, just like we've talked about before with Trump's message to everybody with what happened in Iran. This is a message too. This is another one. We're negotiating right now. Hamas rejects Trump's offer. Okay, well, I guess the next step is Israel, why don't you go ahead and do what you got to do? Israel reminded everybody there are no safe spaces for terrorists, not in Gaza, not in Damascus, not in Qatari 5-star hotels. It doesn't matter. This was long overdue. It was necessary. And frankly, it was glorious. And thank you, Trump, for greenlighting it. And it was that green light that really made the difference. Because let's be real. Under the previous administration, in a zillion years, this would not have happened. Trump, once again, showing that he's got balls of steel and understands how these people think, said, take the shot. And Israel, to their credit, said, we will. That's how allyship works. And that's how power works.
Mend, I just want to go to your point, though, because this is exactly what Trump does, right? So it's the 60-day marker. Let's keep on going back to the 60-day marker. He offered them the deal. Obviously, yesterday, Hamas came out and said, well, first of all, you had the massive terrorist attack that happened in Jerusalem. And then you had them coming back to saying we want to come back to the negotiating table. The only problem is we don't know where the hostages are. And I think that was the red line when Hamas said that. And that was just go ahead. So I think this goes exactly.
Well,
with
it was
what
also
you've been
them
saying.
praising that terrorist attack, according to Hamas.
They took responsibility for it.
Well, at first they said, it's not us, but we are, thank Allah for this wonderful job these terrorist pieces of shit did. And then later they were like, nah, we did it.
Yeah, by the end of the day, they took responsibility for it. So look, as I've said previously, Israel needs to do what needs to be done. You have all these people that come out and they blame Israel for doing this program called mowing the lawn. And mowing the lawn was what Israel did for the last 20 years, which was every year or two, They would have to go into Gaza and take out a couple of bad guys because they were getting too big for their bridges. And Israel would do it, and they called it mowing the lawn. They were like, look, it's just something we need to do to maintain this equilibrium, this balance, where they don't attack us. They don't, they were trying to get rid of the rockets that were being fired on a daily basis into Israel. It wasn't that successful, but they needed to do that. They needed to go in and get it done. And, the Karens on the left, the crystal balls of the world, were always like, oh, they had this program called mowing the lawn, as if that was a bad thing. What Israel needs to do is you got to do what needs to be done regardless of what people say. So they're going to say, don't go into Gaza City. You go into Gaza City. They said, all eyes on Rafah. You go into Rafah. They're saying, oh, Israel should end this war. France, Germany, all these countries, especially UK, end the war and then release the hostages. How are you going to release the hostages after you end the war? That doesn't make any sense. You continue this war until the hostages are released. Israel needs to do what it is doing, and this is just a cherry on the top. This is exactly what needed to be done. You hit them where it hurts. You hit them wherever they are. Fantastically done. And I just want to say one last thing to the people that were hit in Qatar. Bismillahirrahmanirrahman. I hope I got them. I hope they got them all. As they were down there praying to whoever, got them. I hope that missile went right up the backside and took them all out.
Well said. And Golan, I think it's also really important to note the left, as men brought up here, but the left in Israel. And I'm really starting to get sick and tired. And I think it's time, and we spoke about this at the end of yesterday's episode. Men wasn't here for this part of the conversation. But the reality is most of the people that were kidnapped, and a lot of those people, minus the soldiers, were on the left. And
wildly
on the left. And what we're witnessing right now is them wildly, their families who are also on the left, trying to destroy Israel from within. And they are being used as useful idiots by the mainstream media globally around the world.
Of course.
And I'm getting sick and tired of the hostage families. I don't care if that offends people. I am sick and tired of it. And I do think that if this was happened in certain parts of Israel, the reaction from the families would be quite different. They would be behind Bibi 100% and say, do whatever you have to do to save their lives.
I agree with you. And I think, look, I know it sounds insensitive to say it, right? I understand that hearing I'm tired of hearing from hostage families is one of those things that you never thought you'd say coming out of your mouth. It's not because we don't care. It's not because we don't care about the hostages. And it's not because we don't care about the families. God knows every Israeli should. Every moral person on earth should. But that constant chatter is hurting Israel. It's hurting Israel's chances at winning the war. It's frankly hurting Israel's chance at peace. Hamas loves listening to these people talk. Every interview, every tearful plea, every time they pressure the government or they stand in front of traffic, that's Hamas's propaganda machine running on free fuel. They see that division within the country. They see desperation within the country, and they know they can string this out even longer. Something we've talked about in the past. There are certain things that have occurred over time that have given Hamas license to extend the deal, to not take a deal, to renege on a deal. One of them was, of course, back early on when they were recognizing that Israel was going to destroy them and they were going to surrender. They were going to give the hostages back. And then under the Biden administration, they were given a lifeline. They were given more time. And they said, oh, looks like we don't have to do that. There's daylight between America and Israel. And it gave them license to renege. This is a similar thing because it's brutal, but it's true. Israel cannot build a war strategy around the emotional leverage of families on TV. Wars are won by breaking the enemy. Men was in the military. I was in the military. We know this to be true firsthand. We cannot win a war by begging for mercy while the enemy laughs at us and does these ceremonies where they carry around baby coffins and things like that. Every time the families say, we will do anything to bring them home, or there's another poll that says Israelis are ready to do anything to end the war, they know they are winning because what they hear is we've got unlimited bargaining power. Why would they ever take a deal like that?
Let me jump in.
Please.
Okay. So you ever see a grieving parent hitting their spouse? It's just heartbreaking. They're so emotionally hurt that they're physically punching their husband because the baby got into a car crash or something happened. And you don't blame the mom for hitting the husband. Like, it's just, you get it. They are in pain. How many hostages are there? There's 52 hostages. This is not a problem of
Well,
the hostage.
18
how many of those
alive.
hostages are alive?
No, yeah,
between
18,
18 and
but
20.
I'm going to take them all. I'm going to say 52
Okay.
hostages. There are 52 hostage families. These crowds that you're seeing protesting against the war, it's not, they call it the hostage families. It's not the hostage families. Those 52 families get a pass. They could say whatever they want. They could do whatever they want. They are in pain. They are grieving. I get it. It's the useful idiots that show
you know
up.
what? Can I say something? The point you're about to raise is absolutely brilliant. And thank you
100%.
for amending my statement. Yes, I will fill out your point. The 52 hostage family or the hostage forum, whatever you want to call it, are being manipulated and used by foreign money, by domestic money, by people like wherever that money Mend is being funneled from are being used. I just thought it was a great point.
There's a good point to be made here where, people that are grieving get a pass. They could say and do whatever they want. It doesn't matter. And when you hear them, you take into account that they're hurt, they're hurting, they're in deep, deep pain. And we all, can empathize with that. It's the people that show up that then give support to the Hamas and make them emboldened to believe that they are winning. They are winning the psychological war against the Israelis, where you have thousands of Israelis, tens of thousands of Israelis marching to end the war and get back the hostages. What do you think the war is about? How do you think you're going to get back the hostages? I love it that they're protesting Netanyahu to get back the hostages. He doesn't have control
I'm
over
wearing
that.
this thing right here that says bring them home. We've talked about this before. Bring them home puts the onus on the government of Israel.
Yeah, that's why I don't wear it, by the way.
But look, I wear it because it's a symbol of something else, and I wear it here in Spain to let everyone know they can
right.
go.
But I told you that was a big reason.
But I've been saying this since day one. The idea that we didn't say, let my people go and put the onus on them was a fallacy. And it shows you how much the families are being manipulated by forces that are using them to see Bibi kicked out of office.
But Golan, I think it's way deeper than that because we're watching a problem in the world. And I will keep on bringing this up. The world is in denial about radical Islam. It's no different than they were manipulated with Black Lives Matter. There's something deeper going on where these groups are being propped up all across the country, including the United States. Sham groups. We know the Black Lives Matter is full of absolute garbage. Say the same thing for the COVID people, right? For all the people that said, if you're un-American if you don't take the vaccine, or it's like we're watching this twisting of the world come into place, and Israel and Trump and Rubio and a few others seem to be the only ones that have a sense of any sort of moral clarity about what's been going on.
I agree with you. And I think that when you see all the people that are being paid to protest, all the people that are clearly there for reasons other than to protest about whatever the issue is that's on a banner there, the idea of the division of the West, the idea of the destruction of Western values is something that is deeply ingrained especially within Islam. And we know this. So we don't have to speculate. We don't have to make anything up. As we've talked about before, the Muslim Brotherhood and CAIR, 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 the Muslim terror adjacent or terror straight up organization, were caught. In fact, CAIR was an unindicted co-conspirator when the Muslim Brotherhood were discovered to be building something that was a 25-year path towards the destruction of American civilization and the West at large. And it's 25 years later right now. I think we're seeing it come to fruition. And we know that it was about a slow, careful destruction from the inside. And that's what this looks like. So when you are looking at any Western country, whether it's America, whether it's Israel, by the way, whether it's any of these other European countries that have already fallen or are on the verge of it, it's the same thing too. Slow infiltration, slow destruction from the inside until they basically dismantle themselves.
Mend, I wanted to tell you because you posted something this morning, right? And you posted in one of our groups that we're in and make it sound like we're this cabal. Yeah, it's like Zionism upon Zionism, Zionism.com, a private group chat. We're the elders.
Tucker, are you listening?
Yeah, Mend is the elder. Sorry to break your anonymity, but it's amazing. It's amazing when you read the difference between, let's say, the Times of Israel and a different site like Arutz Sheva. The Times of Israel is going by Hamas reporting or Palestinian reporting. Arut Sheva is actually going by the Israeli government. So the Israeli government estimates that they had killed at least 6 terror targets. So
You're talking about the Doha attack?
the Doha attack, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of amazing that people think, and as I always say, the press there is worse than the press here.
The worst is that other outlet in Israel that's just
Haaretz, yeah, Haaretz.
Haaretz. Nobody in Israel reads Haaretz. It's strictly for the woke left in the U.S. that reads that publication, and it's an utter rag. You know, they say Israel's a democracy, but I think you get rid of that. That is a terror supporting outlet. It's as bad as Al Jazeera, if not worse, because it's run by Israelis. So everybody says, oh, look, even the Israelis say this. Even the Israeli, again and again. You know, I caught a clip yesterday of Crystal Ball, the demented retard from Breaking Points, interviewing the head of GHF to talk about this Aguilar guy who is a worker for GHF who turned out to be a complete and utter liar. The baby story that he talked about this kid who walked 12 miles and shook his hand and kissed him and said shukran and talked to him in Arabic, although he doesn't speak Arabic and all that stuff. Anyway, that turned out to be a complete lie because GHF located the kid and he's alive, and they extricated him and got him out of Gaza, and now he's living safe in an undisclosed location. But she was going on, citing Haaretz, citing these things that,
of course, she was.
and that's the ammunition they use. And I always say this. I'm like, look, and I say this about the Trump administration. I say this about the Israelis. I say this about Itamar Ben-Gvir and Smotrich and everyone else. The things you're saying to your domestic audience are used against you by the international audience. And I don't think that not saying these things is going to give you blanket immunity. You're not going to be safe. They're always going to go after you. But
you
why
know that know this, man. You know that
you're giving them red meat,
but you know Haaretz is doing it deliberately. When you're looking at someone like Ben-Gvir or Smotrich, they're saying things they believe, and they happen to be things that some other people have take issue with and can be used against Israel. With Haaretz, or another group, B'Tselem, another supposedly
B'Tselem is terrible.
Group.
These are terrible organizations.
But they are organizations that are specifically anti-Israel and have been since their inception. The whole idea of their policy internally is to delegitimize the very existence of Israel as a Jewish state. That's their point.
And one more thing,
yeah.
Golan, it's really important to point out something that men brought up, because we've had this conversation, and we do need to move on a little bit. We've had this conversation before, though, with where Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, even during the trigonometry episode, they brought this up to Netanyahu. They are not a member of his party. They are part of the coalition, but they are not members of his party. So this is akin to you constantly see on the left, right, in America or anywhere, in Israel or in the parliaments of so many countries, there's always going to be people that say things. They're not members of Bibi's party.
What I'm saying from a strategy standpoint, it is a bad strategy to say things that are going to be used against you and your country.
And
it's just terrible strategy. It's a bad strategy to do that.
Nobody's perfect, but again, as I go back and say, without Smotrich and Ben-Gvir being ideologues, and people listening have no idea who we're talking about. But I asked that you look this up. And the reason, Golan, I asked that people look this up.
Can I just, for our audience, I just clarify a little bit for this?
Yeah.
So we don't have to go down a whole rabbit hole about it, but you're absolutely right about this. One of the things that we see in the media, especially in the United States, but also worldwide, is we see the Netanyahu government says X, or we see the Netanyahu government is doing X. Smotrich and Ben-Gvir are not part of the Netanyahu party. They are not part of Likud. It's called Likud. They're coalition partners. That means different parties. That means different platforms. Means different goals. The media knows this, and they deliberately blur those lines in order to try to put them all together. It's easier to smear Bibi if you can pretend that he personally authored every one of those statements. So yes, Mend, I agree with you. There are certain things that are said where I'm like, wish you hadn't said that. That's going to be used against us. But this is a dishonest, classic political framing. When the left has a messy coalition, nobody says, well, Lapid says it, therefore it's Gantz's fault. That's not how it works. But with Bibi, every hot mic becomes his hot mic, and it all gets.
Or if Marjorie Taylor Greene with her insanity, or Rand Paul with his insanity, or Massey with his insanity, everybody would say that's Trump.
Well, they do try to do that, but try and put it in the other way. Do they ever say Rashida Tlaib said
There you
some
go.
genocidal ridiculousness and therefore Joe Biden is a genocidal person? No, they never in a million years would do that. And that's
It's
what makes
more
it
than that.
dishonest.
It's more than that. There's 2 points I'd like to make. One is that whenever it's on the right, they go the most right-wing government
Ultra.
in Israel,
Ultra.
ultra right-wing, but
Always.
they never say ultra left-wing when it comes to Biden or any of these
Yeah,
other
100%.
lunatics.
That's true.
They never do that. It's just, Biden administration.
But it's never just right, by the way, Mend. It's ultra.
Ultra white, yeah, extreme right, whatever. And then the other thing is that when it comes to B'Tselem and any of these other ridiculous organizations, I'd have no problem with it if there was an equal balance with something like that on the other side. But there is no organization like that in any Arab nation or in any Palestinian circles or in any liberal media that is out there to absolutely highlight and criticize the insanity coming from the other side. So you want to talk about, women's rights, throwing gays off the roofs of buildings, all of that stuff. There's so much there that you could do. And if you had that as a counterbalance to the insane stuff that B'Tselem does, maybe it would somehow, let people see which side is worse. Which side is worse? The side that the Israelis, they called it sexual violence when the Israelis made the Palestinians strip down to their underpants and sit in the open field to make sure they didn't have bombs on them. That they called sexual violence.
Right.
When the other side was raping and murdering. Like, seriously, it doesn't even hold water. So, Licht is Dayan, screw off, let them go do whatever they want.
Okay, let's just finish it up with like this goal on my point, and I will say this to everybody is, and I posted about this, is whenever people talk about the mistakes we made in Iraq, it's always about treasure and soldiers. And that's what the argument always should be. It was never about all the innocent Muslims that got killed. Never, to my knowledge. Maybe on the left that was something, but never on the right.
This is a new thing. This is a new thing that now, under the umbrella of this new world where all we care about are the poor Palestinians, now people are retroactively saying, and the reason that other one was bad was not because of our soldiers, not because of the money you spent, but because what about all the people who died in Afghanistan? How sad. That's a new thing.
I'll tell you what, everybody that believes in this cause, like, invite them into your homes. Invite a Gazan into your home, okay? I mean, let's secure the perimeter, but let them sleep in your home at night. I have no problem with that if we secure the perimeter in the area by about 1.5 miles. I want to move on, though, to this North Carolina thing. The FBI is starting to investigate, and obviously they have to investigate the judges. They're starting to look at that. But I'm looking at this mayor of North Carolina. I have a very hard time.
She's a lunatic.
I have a very hard time pronouncing her name. Viles. It's sort of vials. It sort of perfectly fits Golan. She's vile. And I'm looking at this picture of her, and I'm wondering who in God's name voted for this woman. I brought this up in the Gene Hamilton thing, and I didn't want to put too much pressure on him because he's got to go in front of the House oftentimes. But when you listen to Mazie Hirono speak, she qualifies as the dumbest American. She is up there in the percentile of her parents were drinking when she was they were on some heavy medications while she was in the womb. Okay, both of them, before and after. And you look at this and you wonder what the hell is going on. Who in God's name is voting for these people?
It's a spectacular question. By the way, there's a long list of people I want to ask this about. But this particular one, by the way, I didn't know much about North Carolina, about the government there, about the mayor there. It was one of those things that kind of flew under my radar. I had other things I was paying attention to. And this brought it all into stark focus. And suddenly you start looking into this person. You go, what? This is every clip is her talking about equity while her city is falling apart right in front of her face. She is, as you said, she is nuts. There's no better way to put it. And she's not like eccentric city council nuts where you're, if you were rich, they'd call you eccentric. I mean the kind of nuts where violent repeat offenders roam free, and her biggest concern is making sure the press release uses the right buzzwords and probably the right pronouns. It's one of those things that drives me up a wall because the people who live there are the ones who are suffering, and they're the ones who are making the decision to keep these people in office. It's what we talked about a couple of episodes ago. We were looking at all the Democrat-run cities and how they're falling into disrepair and crime and bad schools and everything else. And yet The Democrats have been in office for 100 years. How is it possible that this echo chamber makes you feel like you cannot go outside of the bubble that you're in order to say, I need something new to happen? This is yet another example of it. And it's crazy.
You know, the mayor of the city in North Carolina where this happened, she came out and made a statement after the attack, and she never mentioned the victim's name once, never talked about the victim. She talked about mental health, and you can't incarcerate your way out of a mental health or homeless crisis, which is moronic and idiotic. If there's someone who has a mental health crisis and he's out there stabbing people in the neck, you absolutely can incarcerate your way out of that. You lock the guy up. He's crazy and he likes to stab people in the neck and he likes to kill people. That's the type of animal you put in a cage. You don't let him roam the streets with, your civilians and your kids. But it's worth noting that this woke mayor, their city, Charlotte, saw 25% increase in homicide rates last year. It was the second highest year on record. The previous high was in 2020, the same year they saw the Black Lives Matter riots. Black Lives Matter and homicides in that city go hand in hand. In 2020 during the riots, that was the second highest. Last year was the highest.
And that's why Trump is going after the former governor Cooper, not the current governor, the Democrat governor. I think it was Roy Cooper that he was going after, if I'm not mistaken, because you're right. This doesn't happen in a day. This is systemic demolition of major cities.
But that is it. When you protect the wolves, you're sacrificing the sheep. And the sheep in this case are the innocent civilians of that city. It's worth noting some of the other crime statistics in that place. Robbery in their city has gone up 54%. Violent offenses are up 10%. And shootings into occupied homes, so drive-by shootings, are up 42%. So it's just a pattern when you get these woke liberal Democrat mayors who believe that mass incarceration is a problem and there are too many black people in jail. Therefore, we should not be putting any more black people in jail. Not looking at justice is blind. And if somebody shoots an innocent person, they belong in jail. No, they don't do that. What they're looking at is saying, who did the shooting? Okay, if it's a black on white, sure, he should not go to jail. If it's a black on black, they definitely don't put him in jail. And if it's a white on anything, lock him up. So you're dealing with the results of that. And I was talking to my brother Neville yesterday about this, and he was saying that these
You have a brother named Neville?
Yeah. On the other podcast, Breaking It Down with the Brothers. And he was talking about that these cities kind of deserve what they get because they keep on voting stupid. He was mentioning that the HBCUs got the most funding ever in history from Trump, the Trump administration. And when it came time to the 2020 election, they did not back Trump. He goes, you can't help people who don't want to help themselves. It's all ideologically driven by a couple of, masters in the community. We're talking about the Jesse Jacksons and the Al Sharptons and all the lunatics that drive the narrative, and they're being bought and paid for by whoever. So by the machine, the Democratic machine tells them what to do. And then the masses go with it. And I disagreed with him. I said, listen, we could educate these people. You could help people realize what a better life is like by doing things like what Trump did in Washington, D.C., by sending the National Guard and saying it doesn't have to be a crime-ridden hellhole. We could fix this. So I was encouraging Trump to continue doing that, send the National Guards into all these different places and give the residents there a taste of what real freedom looks like.
But this is the question that I think we all need to ask is, are the voters uneducated? Are they just being manipulated? Or are they so ideologically captured that they will pull the same lever no matter how many bodies hit the floor? Because at a certain point, you have to ask yourself, if it's not a lack of intelligence, that means it's conditioning. If they've been told for years that voting blue is morally superior or something like that, or that you're on the right side of history if you pull this particular lever, and they believe it even when their neighborhoods are on fire, even when their children are being shot in the street, even when everything's collapsing around them. And we are seeing that the soft on crime policies rising. North Carolina, you mentioned the city. North Carolina had a 36% rise in their homicide rate. Violent crimes doubled year to year in 2024. These are things that should make you go, all right, this is not okay. How can I change it? And instead, they're like, how can I keep doing?
So the answer to what you just said, because you posed 3 options, and the answer is yes, all the above. If you've ever been, I grew up in a very predominantly black neighborhood in Brooklyn. And the one thing you'll notice is that they are opinionated. they're not a monolith. They don't all just agree with something that someone told them. You walk into any barbershop or go to a movie and you will hear 10,000 different opinions. So they're not stupid. They're not uneducated. They know what's up. There's just been this machine, and the machine had a lot of power, and the machine would tell the masses, hey, this group is going to be really good for us, when they haven't been. And it's evident that they haven't been, because you look at places like Detroit or Washington, D.C. or Chicago, and they're not good to them. It's your kids primarily that are being killed on the streets. So I think there's a chance here for Trump to shift the narrative, and he could shift it by sending in the National Guard.
Well said. And Golan, I just want to close this up with the judges, because, in California, when you vote, it's one of the most confusing voting systems I've ever seen in my life, where you get like a thing in the mail where you have to do studies on every single prop, on every single person running. And there's literally no way you could do your due diligence. That's why it's so hard when Trump or a president needs to replace judges federally. They go by, sometimes, sadly, the Federalist Society, who seems to screw up more than they screw right, is, these judges have to be disbarred. They have to be taken off the courts. You can impeach these judges locally, I believe, and they need to be fired. You can't let loose on the streets somebody that's been arrested 14 times.
By the way,
that's just
you're pointing out, I'll let you finish. I just want to say you're pointing out something that people don't talk about enough, which is so many people vote like, let's pick a president. And that's what they think voting is. And voting, there's homework to be done, because you have to vote in judges. You have to vote in school boards. You have to vote for ballot props. And the ballot props half the time are in the legal jargon that even lawyers can't understand. You need a dictionary, a history book, and and a stiff drink just to get through the thing. Yeah, it's difficult to do, and most people are not going to do it. And so what you're seeing is either people just, when it comes to down ballot stuff, they leave it blank a lot of the time. Sometimes they just do it along party lines. And they certainly don't know which judge did which thing that should get impeached. And these things just don't exist unless there is something that gets a lot of press, like a recall or something like that. And even then, it's deliberately confusing. So I think it's something that people don't consider, and certainly people don't even know about half the time.
When it comes to that type of stuff, and I've seen it firsthand in our community, a lot of people have no idea the difference between the different candidates. And what we started doing was we created some WhatsApp groups for different communities and giving them spoon-fed info. Here are the whatever it is, say 24 candidates running for all the different things: judges, district people, the water person, the chief of police, whatever it is in your neighborhood. So like Orange County has them, and then Huntington Beach has its own, and Newport Beach has its own. So what we do is we give them spoon-fed, say, these are the candidates that are running. Here are the 6, 8, or 12 that we recommend. Here's their stance on these critical issues, and this is why we chose them. And here's their opponents, and here's why we don't agree with the, backing these opponents. And you're basically giving a spoon-fed list, and people wind up trusting you. They wind up, but we also give the sources, and we link out to much more robust locations where they could really do a deep dive.
I want to say the thing that scares me the most about not what you're talking about necessarily, because what you're doing it as an honest broker, as you do mend, you are finding sources, you are transparent. I think we are going to see a rise in people asking AI who to vote for.
Yeah.
And when it comes to voting, trusting AI to tell you who to support is a straight shot to disaster.
It's a great point.
Terrible
that
idea.
Is such a fantastic point. As we've brought up, Golan, the reasons and the dangers of it are obviously because the biggest aggregate for AI are left-wing sites. So I got to give you bravo points on the brilliant point of the week.
Thank you. Well, look, I think you said it very well. It's not a neutral oracle here, right? It reflects data and biases coming from specific sites. And we've talked a little bit about this, but you can actually go in your AI, if you're using ChatGPT or Grok or whatever, you can actually ask it, tell me what your sources are and how you weigh them. And you will see that sometimes there's a source where you're like, I can't trust Al Jazeera or The Guardian. Why are they getting 95% trust ratings where other sites that I know I can trust are getting less? That's because it's a regurgitation echo of Silicon Valley politics or whoever happens to be in power at that particular moment. And whenever you are asking AI a question, there is the potential for an activist hiding inside of it. If you go to Wikipedia, it is one of the most corrupt and inaccurate sites that exists, and it's been
don't donate.
And don't donate for sure, but it's been hijacked over and over and over again. And now studies have come out, investigations have come out. You can go and look this stuff up that shows that they have infiltrated and changed history. Because if you don't know history and Wikipedia is your source, then you know what Wikipedia told you, or you know what the editor who wrote it on Wikipedia told you. And that means the AI, which uses Wikipedia as one of its primary sources, is doing the same thing.
I love what you're doing. I think that's great work. It's better than the people that use me as their cheat sheet. I think I had 4 or 5 people call me before the last election. I'm not kidding. I had somebody calling me from the polling booth going, Judah, who do I? And I'm like, what are you asking me? You make it like, I'm like, this is like the least thing I know about oftentimes is local politics. And a former guest of ours knows everything about local politics, but I don't. So I'm really glad with what you're doing.
But you need to. You know, if you don't know who's on the local school board, then the next thing you know is that they're trying to convince your kids that they need to chop off their weenies because they're gender confused. So it's really important to get involved in all levels. And this is where like the George Soros, the people that are trying to destroy America have really focused in on. While everybody else was focused in on like congressmen and senators, they were doing activist judges under the radar. Nobody realized it until it was too late. They were funding, the radical DAs. Nobody like really paid attention to that. And then you get the Alvin Braggs and the, Letitia James and all the other lunatics.
San Francisco, Philadelphia,
all over, just people who refuse to prosecute real crimes when there's a certain ethnic group that is accused of that crime. So it's important. Everybody should get involved in local elections.
Last thing and moving on, and really both brilliant points, both of you, brilliantly what you're doing, and go on the brilliant point with it, which frightens me about people asking ChatGPT who to vote for. Oh my God.
I'm telling you, watch for it. I'm telling you.
Republicans really need to stay on top of that thing. They truly do. But I want to go to this last thing because I believe right now, people, like I said, after 9/11, I was sitting in the kitchen with my dad, and my dad used to work for Time Life, Time Warner, or Time AOL in the middle. And I said to him, Golan, when I was reading AOL, they were putting blame on America. And I said, you guys are on the wrong side of history. This is going to hurt. And I was right. And I was very young when I said that, but I just remember reading it, thinking to myself, wow, you're on the wrong side of history. And I really think a lot of what people are doing and saying will sooner than later prove them to be on the wrong side of history. So I'm referring now to obviously the Pod Bros, Rogan, his posse, Coma Idiots, Crystal Balls. And we're witnessing this with CBS right now, right? So CBS just picked a Republican ombudsman. They're being bought by Skydance if the Dems allow that to go through. They're putting Barry Weiss in, not to be a conservative, just to be an accurate news source.
She's not conservative. Barry Weiss is not conservative. She came from the New York Times. She was as liberal as it came.
That's exactly why I'm bringing it up.
She was not woke.
And that's exactly why I'm bringing it up. And Golan, what you're going to see is capitalism wins the day, because these companies and these Pod Bros and the Tuckers and everybody, they're going to go broke. The money is going to dry up. Eventually, we'll realize the linkage. They are on the wrong side of history. And the reason I bring this up is because this idiot letter from 1,000 celebrities in Hollywood, and 1,500 now, or whatever it is, like Emma Stone, Ruffalo, among Hollywood industry members signing boycott of Israeli film institutions. Brilliant, bravo, you bunch of jackasses. But Golan, this is going to come back to bite them in the ass. They are on the wrong side of history. Ruffalo, Emma Stone, every single one of these people is on the wrong side of history. You chose evil, you assholes.
Well put, and I agree with you 100%. I was talking about this a lot today. I'm actually involved in an initiative that's going to be responding to this very, very soon, along with a lot of other people within the industry and outside the industry. And I think that lunacy doesn't last forever, right? It can run wild for a while, and we've seen it run wild for a while. And I think, when you see rioters being praised as mostly peaceful, and the criminals, as men pointed out yesterday, being coddled as victims of circumstance or whatever it is, Hamas being called resistance fighters, all of this stuff, it's all lunacy. But history, I think, has a funny way of snapping the pendulum back, and reality always wins. Sometimes it takes a while, but reality always wins. You can only deny gravity for so long before you hit the ground. And I think that these people are going to hit the ground, and they're going to hit the ground hard. And I think you said it beautifully. They are on the wrong side of history. It's essentially I used this yesterday, but I'll repeat it again today. It's like watching the Nazis operate, and then we go in and we bomb Dresden or we bomb Berlin, and now because you feel bad for some of the people who weren't necessarily Nazis but maybe supported the Nazi war effort, you suddenly hoist up a swastika over your house and sign a letter saying, I hope all the swastika bearers are okay, and I'm going to condemn America for this bombing. History is patient, truth is relentless, and accountability is unavoidable. The wrong side always finds out eventually.
Sounds like karma. Talking about karma, I got a great story for us today. This one is absolutely karma coming full circle. So 11 years after the officer shooting of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. Do you guys remember that? Michael Brown,
course,
hands
yes.
up, don't shoot.
Of course.
Sparked waves of protest across the country about police brutality. The friend who was with Brown when it happened has been shot dead in the same place. Darian Johnson, 33 years old, was a victim of a shooting about 8:30 a.m. on Sunday in a block of apartments less than a mile from where Michael Brown died, according to the Ferguson police spokesperson, Patricia Washington. Johnson's account of Brown's 2014 killing helped inspire the iconic "Hands up, don't shoot" protest chant, which was heard at demonstrations across the U.S. Subsequent investigations found that his account of what happened was complete and utter bullshit. Michael Brown was a giant thug who just beat up I believe it was an Asian store clerk, stole food, came out of the store. I don't know what happened with the police.
No,
but
he bum rushed a police officer.
Well, yeah. So they
And
called the cops. The cops showed up, and this guy Johnson's account of what happened was Michael Brown turned around, was walking away from the police with his hands up, saying, "Don't shoot," and they shot him anyway. They killed the man for no reason. Subsequent investigations found Michael Brown's DNA inside the police officer's car on his gun. So this giant,
but also the witnesses themselves admitted later that they lied.
Everybody on the
forensics proved
ground,
it was false,
everybody on the
everything.
ground was verifying what the police
besides
officer
for
said.
the guy who was just killed. So that's why I'm talking about karma's coming full circle. Brown's DNA was inside the car. He bum rushed the cop. He went through the window into the cop car, and he was wrestling with the cop over the gun, and he was shot inside the guy's cop car. So good riddance to that guy. Not a single tear shed from Michael Brown. Rest in piss. And your friend Johnson, you too.
Okay, well said. But go on, getting back to it, I do think, and I'm happy you're involved with the campaigns against this stuff. The last thing I just want to bring up quickly, because we're going to do a short show for us, is you literally cannot trust a number that comes out of Washington, D.C. From any bureau, any statistic, you have to assume that it's a lie. So the Labor Department revised its numbers of the jobs reports from March of last year to now by 900,000 jobs, which lowered its estimate of employment by. So they lied about, if I'm reading this correctly, about 900,000 jobs.
Yeah. Which is not unusual, by the way. The corrections, or what, there's a specific word that they use, but these corrections are often so
not usually this high, Golan.
No, but it's not unusual for them to be pretty high, and they're often so life-shakingly high. Maybe not this high, but they still are very high. That they actually absolutely change the calculus on what is actually happening in the world at large.
Yeah, and man, again, this goes to the thing with numbers and the people that these statistic bureaus, everybody that makes these predictions, never trust them. You know, we were talking before the show about investments. Listen, everything's a risk, and if you listen to every former Secretary of the Treasury, we'd all be like, jumping off buildings right now like it was 1929. And none of that is happening. Obviously, is inflation still high? Yes. Is unemployment where we wanted to be? Absolutely not. Trump took over Golan, an absolute crap show, foreign and domestically, and look at what he's doing look at what he's doing internationally. He's once again waved that wand many times, that magic wand. That's karma, man.
It's not just that the statistics are off. It gets wonky
Not off,
when
they're manipulated.
It's manipulated, but always in one direction. So that's what you see, is that when it was Biden, they were saying, oh, everything's not that bad. The job numbers are great, blah, blah, blah. And then when it comes to this guy, the current administration, Trump, they'll revise it down. So same thing with the interest rates. when it was under Biden, this same Treasury Secretary kept on lowering the interest rates. And now under Trump, when things are much better, it's objectively much better, he's not lowering them. So it shows you the bias. There's definitely bias in these organizations.
Yeah, and look, the whole game here is optics, right? Because what we have discovered, if we're really paying attention, is that DC does not care if the numbers are real. They care if the narrative works, which is why when do the numbers shift? This is important. It's after the headlines fade. They get that big splash with the first report. Weeks later, quiet little revision. Most people don't even know about it. Reminds me of the New York Times. Look at this starving baby, 100 million people. The baby has muscular dystrophy. We'll put that on a second account that has 50,000 people. It's the same thing.
And again, karma coming back to Obama. Trump has so many wands, you jackass, that it's not even funny. That guy just wands away in the wanding section. I was trying to think of something, but I could not. Okay. I want to thank everybody out there that's been following us. I want to thank just all the comments, the reviews, and don't forget to leave that 5-star review. It's the only thing we really ever ask for. You can find us all over at thedailycheatsheet.com. Just go to thedailycheatsheet.com. That's where all of our links are. Thedailycheatsheet.com. Hopefully we have a great guest for you tomorrow. And I want to thank everybody out there from the bottom of our hearts. I want to wish everybody a good morning, afternoon, and night world, wherever you are. God bless you all.